What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal, Spaz Phoenix, the YWC reality check, and this is Road Signs. Guys, Chamber is right around the corner, about 8 days, if I'm not mistaken, from the day of this video, considering it's, 1 a.m. in the morning. It is, in fact, 8 days, because it's Sunday, etc. I'm tired. It's friggin' cold outside. I just got back from Toronto seeing RoboCop. RoboCop sucks. Don't waste your time. Chilled out with a good friend, had a good time in Toronto, but do not waste your time on RoboCop. It's not that good. And it's cold, and so the, me sniffing through all my videos, which people have actually commented on, thanks for that, isn't going to be any different tonight. Before I get on to anything to do with WrestleMania, I do have to call out some people on some bullshit, which has become quite a pattern for me. I've done it in the past. Back before Preston and I kind of became buddies, I called him out on some stuff. I've had debates with people before. I've called Mark Pearson out on any number of things, because that boy is full of shit. Going to call out the two co-hosts of TWITWOW. Little history. Anybody that's been watching this channel for a long time may have known of my association with a group of people known as the YWC4 Horsemen. Obviously, the YWC4 Horsemen, if you were following me at the time, were Delexman and Preston, who I still have a ridiculous amount of respect for, and anybody who's been living under a rock should go check out. There was John, who he and I began a series called The Grappler's Grab Bag, which was pretty fun and pretty involved, even though there was only 2 episodes ever made. And there was Ashton, who is an opinionated even, I can speak, I swear, little puke, who thinks he's going to work for the WWE one day, who tried to convince that group at the time that I would tarnish their reputation in the YWC. Oh yes. But John and Ashton have their own podcast called TWITWOW. And I'm going to be careful here because I know TWITWOW shares some internet space with one of the groups that I'm now on Facebook. Pro Wrestling is taking over Facebook. But I really, guys, hand on heart, if I really want to get my thoughts together for a video, especially a non-structured video like these videos have been the past couple of weeks, and not a typical Raw review, what I will do is I will go to the idiots out there in the YWC. I will go to, I don't know, the Bone Dusters, the Ashtons, the Johns, the Mark Pearsons, whatever, that spit absolute bullshit, and what I would say to put them in their place eventually becomes what I say up here in a much, much more positive venue, does it not? But you get the odd occasion, like when I told off Mark Pearson the other week about his treatment of CM Punk fans, for example. I will get people that say, Spaz, I know you've got a better head than these guys, you gotta listen to this. And I listened to a clip of TWITWOW, and it was from 2 Fridays ago. I believe it was a SmackDown review. I left it alone at the time, and then the more I thought about it, the more it bugged me. The more I thought I had to say something. They were talking about the breakup of the Primetime Players. Now, let's be real. Primetime Players came in, they were funny, they were entertaining at best, they were kind of a jobber tag team, and nobody really gave a shit about them. I can't say I gave a shit about them either, to be honest. I wanted to give a shit about them because I saw the potential in them for a fun tag team, sort of Crime Time revisited without the criminal aspect. But nobody gave a shit about the tag team. Nobody gave a shit that they split up. Nobody gave a shit how they split up. And it was all done in a very, very lackluster fashion, up to and including a Darren Young beatdown of Titus O'Neil in the back on one episode of SmackDown. Now, heard this little clip of TWITWOW, heard them talking about how this split had gone horribly and how nobody gave a shit. Nobody's going to give a shit about Titus O'Neil. Nobody's going to give a shit about Darren Young, which is all fine and good. And for the most part, I will actually agree. I will give them some credit for this. But then Ashton, the ignorant little shit that he is, trying to get more attention for his show, comes out with a pearl of ignorance, which is the only thing I can call it, something along the lines of, it's not that hard. All Titus O'Neil has to do is stand there and be a big black guy, and he got his ass kicked by the smaller guy. And what's worse, he got his ass kicked by a gay guy. Now, I will admit, I have done some videos on this channel that were designed to get attention. Scene Apocalypse 1 and 2, the prime examples. There are certain... I don't want to stand on any moral pedestals, guys. I'm not the greatest person in the world. Most of you know this at this point about me. But the fact that you are going to shit on an entire race and an entire sexual orientation that has never been brought up as an issue in any way, shape, or form having anything to do with the show, just so that people will sit there at your podcast speaker or listening to their iPod or whatever and say, ooh, they must have some balls to go there. It would be different. It would be different if it was a group like the Nation of Domination, who were a black power faction, and that was their gimmick, and that was what they were basing their characters on. Then you could speak to the race issue. You know, if they were a little more bizarre, if it was sort of like Goldust a la Attitude Era, and you wanted to sort of comment on it that way, I could understand that as well. But here's just two guys that tried to put together a fun tag team, didn't have much backing from the WWE, had horrible booking, and nothing ever really came of them. But you're going to bash both of them for being black and one of them being gay. You are vulgar individuals. And that's all the breath I'm going to waste on you two. Anybody that watches TWITWOW, from this point forward especially, should be embarrassed, ashamed of themselves, and it was the last bit of bullshit from them that has ever passed through my speakers. Moving on, let's talk about greater and better things. Moving towards WrestleMania, moving towards the night before WrestleMania, we have the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Already we know the Ultimate Warrior is going in. Fantastic. Jake the Snake Roberts, great sort of recovery, redemption storyline there. And then you gotta know that WWE is eventually going to speak to my fan heart. They put Lita, the Queen of Extreme, into the Hall of Fame for 2014 at WrestleMania 30. Now, how fantastic is this, honestly? How badass is Lita, first of all? How true is it that there hasn't been anybody as legit as Lita since in her time or since? I mean, I'm a fan of AJ Lee nowadays, but I'm sorry, you still put AJ Lee next to Lita and the parallel just isn't there. Lita and Trish Stratus had the Rock Austin rivalry of women's wrestling in the WWE. Lita held her own with men, and yes, other people have done that too. Chyna is the prime example of that. Natalya has done some things, Beth Phoenix has done some things, ODB over in TNA has done some things, but Lita was part of TLC, an active member of TLC. She was an active member of the hardcore matches between Edge and Mick Foley. She took a barbed wire mandible claw at WrestleMania, for fuck's sake. Just an entirely different caliber of super. Was she the greatest in-ring technician? Could she give you a Benoit Angle matte 5-star classic? No. But much like fans of the Hardy Boys, who she was associated with for most of her career, you don't look for 5-star matte wrestling classics from the Hardys, and you didn't look to it from Lita either. The heel work that she did when she was with Rated R Superstar Edge, untouchable for any diva that was there at the time and any diva since. So huge, huge, heartfelt congratulations to Lita. Not only does she deserve it, but from my personal perspective, one of, if not my favorite women's wrestlers of all time. Moving on, keeping with the theme of women's wrestling in general, Emma and Summer Rae, this little bubbling feud we have starting on Raw in the recent weeks, really brings me to the ascension of Emma from NXT to WWE. And I'm going to do something here that most people in the YWC, will not do. I am going to come hand on heart. I am so glad to be wrong. I questioned when they started bringing Emma into the arenas, you know, bringing her out with Santino, etc., introducing her, because I was really ticked at the time that if they were going to bring somebody up from NXT, they would probably push her way too hard and try to throw her into something with AJ Lee right away. They didn't. I was also, I will admit, a bit butthurt that it wasn't Paige, because Paige, let's face it, also needs to be on the roster. But no, they're doing sort of a women's mid-card rivalry between her and Summer Rae, which is fine. It makes sense on the basis level of, okay, Summer Rae does the ballroom dancing thing that's supposed to be all elegant and whatever, and Emma's thing is with the whatever the hell you call this deal that is supposed to be super awkward. They contrast like that, and it's great, and it's going to be a good little thing. It's something new. It's something that will establish sort of levels in the Divas division. But here is the big thing. We're proving that in the women's division you can have something other than a rivalry that revolves around the title or a rivalry that revolves around the Total Divas show. Because that's all we've gotten in recent weeks, is people not really establishing a pecking order and trying to all sort of jockey as who should be the next women's champion. I mean, obviously nobody's going to take it off AJ Lee because nobody deserves it. Emma included, Summer Rae included, no offense, but there's a big clusterfuck around AJ, and they're not really doing very much about that. But those are all the people that are supposedly in contention for the Divas Championship. If you develop out of nowhere sort of this diva mid-card with Summer Rae and Emma being the first two members of it, they can have something separate from Total Divas. Yes, I know Summer Rae is going to be on Total Divas eventually. I'm aware, but for the moment, I'm trying to make a point here. Something separate from that, people that are on the show versus people that are not on the show rivalry. Something different from, oh, I'm immediately grabbing for a belt. You can have something else, and it's good. And not only that, Summer and Emma both being from NXT gives the commentators the perfect excuse to push NXT, and there's no better time to push NXT than right now when NXT is about to hit the WWE Network. Now, that news isn't quite as exciting for me or anybody else in Canada for two reasons. A, we're not getting the network in Canada right away. And B, NXT's always been on TV for us in Canada. It's on the score. Not that I reach out on Twitter very often, but I follow Jimmy Corderas, former WWE referee and current host or co-host of Aftermath on the Score 360, Sportsnet 360, which is our sports channel here in Canada that carries WWE, and I inquired, hey, once this thing flips over to being on the WWE Network, is it still going to be carried in Canada? Any of my viewers out there in Canada, as far as we know right now, it's not going to change. It's still going to be carried here in Canada, which is fantastic because, WWE takes their sweet ass time to get me anything up here in Canada. Just watch me when I try to go buy my WrestleMania DVDs, etc. But yes, we are diversifying the women's division, even though it's not particularly with the diva that I want. I don't have anything against Emma. I've seen Emma versus Summer Rae in NXT. They don't put on horrible matches. If they do what they did in NXT on the main event stage, it'll be something to watch, and it'll be a great way, again, as I say, for the commentators and others, going down the line to push NXT as a solid brand rather than something that's just going on in the background, which is good for everybody. If you look at all the people from NXT or recent, I guess you could say, graduates of NXT that are really big driving forces on the main roster right now, NXT should get its due. I mean, a lot of people are crying, a lot of people, like Ashton, like John, like Mark Pearson, are all crying and wailing the blues that the commentators are making fun of Emma and calling her awkward and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, first of all, two things. A, she is fucking awkward, that's part of her character. B, the commentators picking on her is going to get her all kinds of sympathy as an underdog babyface, which will propel her in this rivalry with Summer Rae, who absorbs obnoxiousness from Fandango and will draw heat like a magnet. Everybody wins. The Real Americans are in an interesting position right now. Cesaro is part of the Elimination Chamber. At Elimination Chamber, he dominated Randy Orton on SmackDown. I did not see that one coming. Good for him. I have no problem with can't call him Antonio Cesaro anymore. This is the other weird thing. He's just Cesaro now because apparently the WWE writing team didn't think anybody would believe that somebody with the name Antonio would be tough. So they did it to Big E Langston too. So now instead of Big E Langston and Antonio Cesaro, we have Big E, that's it, and Cesaro, that's it. But anyway, Cesaro had a fantastic match with Randy Orton on SmackDown, which makes me look forward to what he's going to do in the Rumble match, or in the Chamber match, I should say, and makes me think he's not just going to be there as filler, which is fantastic. On the other side of the coin, Jack Swagger, who did not qualify for the Elimination Chamber, did qualify for a shot at the Intercontinental Championship currently held by Big E, not Langston. Let me just say this, too, about SmackDown. SmackDown this week was pretty friggin' great in general, but the number one contendership for the Intercontinental Championship was held in a four-way between Mark Henry, Kofi Kingston, Rey Mysterio, and Jack Swagger. Jack Swagger is boring as fuck. Rey Mysterio should have retired a hell of a long time ago. Kofi Kingston is overhyped and oversold by the masses. And Mark Henry, though I'm not personally a fan of his, is great for a big guy. This match that they had on SmackDown, if you haven't seen it, I implore you, go back and watch this week's SmackDown. It's actually way, way better than it deserves to be. But with Cesaro in contention for the world title, we know he's not going to win. It's leading up to WrestleMania. Cesaro is not main eventing WrestleMania. Let's be real. But he's in contention for the main title of the company, and Swagger is in contention for the number 2 belt of the company. Zeb Coulter, first of all, as the manager, has got to be, smiling like the cat that ate the canary, because he could potentially have 2 champions coming out of Elimination Chamber. That's potential, kayfabe potential, etc. But it leads you to believe one of two things. Either this is going to strengthen them as a unit again, or one of them is going to be grandstanding and the other one isn't. I mean, can you imagine if Cesaro doesn't win the world title, but Swagger wins the Intercontinental Championship, and they could have a conversation like, hey, at least I won my match, and Cesaro could come back and say something to the effect of, yeah, you won a match for a second place championship. Or the other way around, Swagger could strike out completely, and, you know, in another world, Cesaro could go home with the world title, and Zeb Coulter could drop Swagger and just represent Antonio. A lot of things could happen from this. The dynamic of the Real Americans in this, you know, in this progression going forward is fantastic, and it's bizarre to think that this team, this really, really athletic team that has been on such a roll and looks so great against everybody and could potentially be the respective Intercontinental Champion and World Heavyweight Champion, never touched tag team gold. Does that strike anybody else as funny? Like, you've got a team that could walk out with the two now major titles of the company that never got to hold tag team gold. It's bizarre, but, you know, it is what it is. We have to push teams like Team Hell No. How'd that work out for us? Okay. All the riffraff is all said and done with now. Now we talk about the main event in the WWE right now. And no, it is not the Elimination Chamber. And no, it is not WrestleMania. It is the build between the WYATTS and the SHEILD. I love, and I said this in my last video, and I'm going to reiterate it. I'm going to sound repetitive as fuck this week. I don't care. This rivalry between the SHEILD and the WYATTS is WWE right now. Bryan fans can suck it. This is bigger than Daniel Bryan. CM Punk fans kind of have to deal with it because CM Punk left. Ziggler's jobbing. The guys that the WWE want us to think are a big deal, Randy Orton, Batista, John Cena, Sheamus, etc. Just no. This right here is the main reason me and a lot of other people that I know that watch wrestling are watching wrestling right now. And here is where I say two things. Here is where you push the importance of NXT 110%, because other than Dean Ambrose, unless I missed something, all 5 of the other guys in this match all came from NXT. All of them. We saw them grow through NXT if we were watching it at the time, and we are happy to see them find success on the main stage. On the other hand, you've got the people that bitch that, oh my god, it's always the same shit, we always get Cena, we always get this, we always get that, we always get Orton. Okay, WWE is pushing and putting more effort into this match for Elimination Chamber, booking-wise, storyline-wise, intensity, etc., 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 than they are in their world title match. Watch Raw, watch SmackDown, see what's being booked more intensely, see what has more suspense, see what has a lot of psychology and great mic work and great time on the mic. Go around and ask anybody in the YWC what match they're looking forward to at the Elimination Chamber. It has a reason. And it's a turf war, and it's a war of attrition, and it's a war of survival, and it's all those cliche things you can throw out there, but they don't sound so cliche because in this match it is so true. Let's look at what they've done just this week. On Raw, this week, the Wyatts defeated Rey Mysterio and the Rhodes Brothers. Now, on its face, Rey Mysterio is the big name that he is, the big Mexican sensation. He's held how many titles, how many championships? He is mini Cena. Like, the commentators in WWE in general treat him like he's untouchable. Former multiple-time world champion, even though the last time it only lasted about an hour and it was stolen from Cena, so sorry about your luck. Former tag team champion with multiple people. Former Intercontinental and U.S. champion. Former Cruiserweight champion and I believe Light Heavyweight champion. Well decorated guy in Rey Mysterio. You got the Rhodes Brothers. You know, you got Goldust, who's looking better than he ever has. Cody Rhodes, who doesn't need any help to look fantastic. And they are just coming off a great run with the tag team championships. That team was destroyed by the Wyatts. Not only that, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. I can't stand Rey Mysterio these days. It's just too unbelievable. Everybody that he's in the ring with has to position themselves just so that he can pull off his tandem offense and his signature artillery that isn't even that good. So that being said, seeing him eat the Sister Abigail with a knife and fork at the end of this match made me smile. And you know what? The one thing I will say is the one thing Rey Mysterio does very well is get hurt, doesn't he? That's right, I said it. The one thing Rey Mysterio did that was good in this match was get hurt. It's the same thing with to use an acting reference in most of the movies that I've seen him in, the best thing Leonardo DiCaprio can do is die. The best thing Rey Mysterio can do is get hurt. And he's very good at it because he's had a lot of practice. He took the Sister Abigail like he was going to eat a piece of the mat. Now, the big part came after this match, where Bray Wyatt went back down to his rocking chair with his boys in tow, cut a great promo on the Shield. I didn't write it all down. I didn't have time to write it all down. But the biggest and best part of all this, the Shield are all toy soldiers, and they are going to fall just in time for me to play my next game. Leading us, hopefully. And I know, at this point, I'm getting laughed at for hoping that this match is actually happening. At this point, they go to Elimination Chamber, they dispatch the Shield, Bray Wyatt moves on to John Cena at WrestleMania. I cannot wait. And everybody's saying, you know, oh, John Cena's going to wipe the floor with him, John Cena's going to squash him. You know what? Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm an absolute moron. Maybe your buddy, your pal, Spaz Phoenix, the reality check, needs a reality check. But for right now, I am clinging to the hope that the Wyatt family and anything else that they need to bring comes to WrestleMania and destroys John fucking Cena. Oh, yes. Promo was great. On the same night, the Shield also had a fantastic night because the Shield's Dean Ambrose got called by Renee Young, who's, you know, smoking hot and from Toronto. Got called on the fact that he hadn't defended the US Championship in a while, so he threw out an open challenge. And it wasn't hard to find an answer to the open challenge because it was the returning Mark Henry. Dean Ambrose, using psychology, using great ring awareness and all those things that the Shield brings to the table, did hang with Mark Henry for a long time. Eventually, yes, Mark Henry got the upper hand. The Shield got Dean Ambrose disqualified. He kept his belt and they put a beat down on him. But that really wasn't the story, was it? The story is the Wyatts coming out. The story is the Wyatts coming out down the ramp, standing on one side of the ring. The Shield, who were already in, not retreat, but in the process of leaving through the crowd and whatnot, got called back, and they were standing on the other side. And then the Wyatts got up on the apron. And then the Shield got up on the apron. And here's what I like. The two men to step into the ring of their respective teams would be the ones that you would call the leaders. Obviously, Bray Wyatt for the Wyatt family, and it wasn't Dean Ambrose for the Shield, it was Roman Reigns. Not only does this build towards the Shield versus the Wyatt family, this also builds to that triple threat match between the Shield that we're going to see at WrestleMania, because you gotta think Dean Ambrose looks at that as Roman Reigns stepping on his toes as far as being the leader, as far as taking things by the reins, so to speak, and being that one face to stick his nose into the ring before the Wyatts made their retreat for the evening. I don't know why the Wyatts back down. I don't like that. I would have liked it if eventually some officials came out and took the Shield away, took the Wyatts away. I don't want them to have physical contact, and they haven't done that yet, and that builds the suspense, and that's fantastic. I don't like that in this stare down, one of them had to back down. The other thing that I would have loved, and here is what I would love to see if Mark Henry gets a rematch this week on Raw, and in all honesty, I hope he does. I want the Wyatts to come down, and I want them, without laying a hand on anybody, I want them to cost Dean Ambrose the US Championship. For a few reasons. They could go in there quickly, get the distraction, get the job done, and Bray Wyatt could pull his boys out quickly before there's any physicality, and it would be one shot in their favor in this war, because everything right now has been, the Shield has a match, the Wyatts cut a promo, the Wyatts have a match, the Shield cut a promo, etc. Everything's been very even up until this point. The one point that the Shield has over the Wyatts is in that stare down, the Wyatts were the ones to back down. They could even those scales this week on Raw if they cost Dean Ambrose the championship. In addition to that, in addition to how that helps build this match, it doesn't make any sense for Dean Ambrose, with what the Shield is doing right now, to have the US Championship, because the 3-on-3 match doesn't involve the US Championship whatsoever, which means yet another pay-per-view where the US Championship isn't defended. Now, a lot of people are saying at WrestleMania that the triple threat match between the Shield between the 3 Shield members, rather, should be for the U.S. Championship. But guys, honestly, the match doesn't need it. The way we're anticipating this triple threat match between these 3 guys, it doesn't need a title involved. Now, you can have that triple threat match at WrestleMania, and you can have Wyatt versus Cena at WrestleMania, and you could have the Shield fighting over the U.S. Championship, or you could have the Shield fighting for their own self-respect and honor and leadership and whatever you want to call it, you know, biggest dog in the yard mentality. And you could have Mark Henry go into WrestleMania for an entirely different match, start an entirely different story with him and somebody else for the Intercontinental Championship. That's how you build a card for WrestleMania that has a list of matches, I should say, where everything has importance. This match has enough importance that it doesn't need a belt. Maybe Mark Henry's match, whatever he's doing at WrestleMania, won't have that same element. So at least if it's for the Intercontinental Championship, it'll mean something. Spread out the importance of everything involved in wrestling over everybody, and then the whole show's great. Am I right? Am I right? Okay. Shield versus Bryan, Sheamus, and Christian on SmackDown. This is the last thing I'm going to touch on because I've waffled on for way too long now. Shield versus Bryan, Sheamus, and Christian on SmackDown. The Shield win. Reigns ragdolls Sheamus, which makes me a happy kid. Much along the same lines as Rey Mysterio. Sheamus is the Ginger John Cena. He came back after how many months being gone, and he's automatically thrust into the World Heavyweight Championship picture because it's Sheamus and because we need another Cena in case our Cena breaks down. I don't like it. I don't like him. He doesn't contribute anything in the ring as far as I'm concerned. So to see him get the ragdoll shit kicked out of him by Roman Reigns made me a happy kid. Not only that, the Shield won against 3 former world champions. Not only that, it only proves my point that WWE is putting a hell of a lot more stock in this 3-on-3 match between the Shield and the Wyatts than they are in their Elimination Chamber match, because 3 guys from that 6-man tag beat 3 top competitors in your World Heavyweight Championship match, making them look more legitimate, making the Wyatt family look even more important when they beat them at the Elimination Chamber. So guys, you can't ask for anything more out of this feud, other than them laying hands on each other, which I really hope they don't do until the pay-per-view. You can't ask for anything more about this from this pay-per-view. You can't ask the WWE to put anything more into this match, and you can't ask anything more for 6 guys that, believe it or not, have not even been in the WWE 2 years yet. They are the reason people are buying Elimination Chamber. WWE, for all their faults, for all the things you don't like them for doing right now, are allowing these 6 guys to be the draw of this pay-per-view. What have they done for the actual Elimination Chamber match, other than have Randy Orton face each guy that's in it? What have they really done for Batista versus Alberto Del Rio? They just kind of made it and said, hey, it's a thing. They made a U.S. champion, or an Intercontinental Championship match, yes, between Jack Swagger and not Big E Langston, just Big E. I hate that. But what's gotten more attention? Really? Other than the Daniel Bryan portion? And this is... I'm gonna ramble on now because everything that I have listed over here, I don't have the Doomy clipboard of doom, so everything that I was gonna say tonight is already like typed out over here, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to trying to decipher my own shitty writing. Randy Orton, oh, he gets pushed over the moon, did the job to Antonio Cesaro in smashing fashion on SmackDown this week, leading into this match. He also did the job to Daniel Bryan a couple weeks ago on Raw. Obviously, he did the job to John Cena because it's John Cena and you can't help that. So who looks strong going in? All you NXT fans, which I'm one of you, all you FCW fans, which I'm not, all you indie fans, all you ROH fans that know, you know, what Daniel Bryan had for breakfast 5 years ago in the Saddle Dome at some such whatever. All of you. Who's being pushed right now? Bray Wyatt, Eric Harper, Luke Harper, Eric Rowan, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Cesaro, Big E Langston, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk if he was still there. You can't ask for more, guys. You can sit there and talk about how Daniel Bryan gets screwed and CM Punk gets screwed. Well, CM Punk whatever. You can talk about how all your guys are held down by all these guys up here, but you know what? I dare you. And if I do a Raw review this week, I'm going to make a point of doing this. Between opening segments, mid segments, backstage segments, and whatever matches he tends to be involved in, I bet you Daniel Bryan is involved in about 45 minutes of any Raw show. I bet you, at this point, guys, you know me as well as anybody. I'm the biggest critic of John Cena. Daniel Bryan gets more screen time than John Cena now. The Wyatts get more attention, or get more screen time than John Cena these days. John Cena got, okay, yes, he had the closing match on Raw, but other than that match and the little 2-minute interview he did before that match, John Cena wasn't seen all night. I'm not saying I like John Cena. John Cena is still, trust me, the cancer on wrestling. But, you know, that cancer is subsiding a little bit. We are getting those remedies injected. And yes, I'm being very, very metaphorical, and it's very late at night. But all of you who are determined, and I'm sorry, I'm going to point to Deluxe Man as an example, because he has an amazing series going on his channel right now called Confessions of a Disgruntled Wrestling Fan, which are fantastic, and I urge you all to go take the time, go check out his 5 episodes that are there. He makes some great points, but I gotta disagree with people like him and people like, I don't know, the TWITWOWs and the Mark Pearsons and the whoever else you want to mention, that since Daniel Bryan didn't win the Royal Rumble, have tried to convince us that there's nothing good happening in wrestling anymore. NXT stars are the backbone of this show. You know, NXT stars are getting World Championship title matches. NXT stars and indie stars and brand new guys are involved in matches more important than world title matches. It's not that bad, guys. And you guys ask me how, oh, after all the bullshit at the Royal Rumble, how can you be excited about WrestleMania? It's because of stuff like this. It's because we're getting Bray Wyatt versus John Cena. And you know what? Bray Wyatt facing John Cena is like anybody that goes after the streak. Yes, I would like to see him win. Of course I would like to see him win. If Bray Wyatt went up against The Undertaker, of course I would love to see him win. Not that I think the streak should end. That's another video topic for another time. But I mean it in the sense that John Cena is it as far as the WWE brass is concerned. So if you are in a legitimate rivalry with him at WrestleMania, yes, it would ultimately make you if you won. But the fact that you're there means that you've taken the first step. It means you've taken a lot of first steps. If you get to be in a rivalry with John Cena at WrestleMania, let alone WrestleMania 30, you've done something. If you come in as a powerful faction like the SHEILD and you are so over and you have been allowed to be so impactful that fighting each other is an event at WrestleMania 30, you've done something. If you're Daniel Bryan and just because you didn't have the title handed to you on a silver platter, you know, you're either going to be going up against Undertaker or Triple H, or again, arguably opponents that are bigger than the WWE Championship, you've done something. If they bring in somebody like a Brock Lesnar who's supposed to symbolize this big pro wrestling versus MMA thing that is iconic and symbolic, and you get to pick up that torch like CM Punk did, and CM Punk is another one of those indie guys that you guys all love, you've done something. And anybody that I just mentioned, the Wyatts, the SHEILD, Punk, Cesaro, Bryan, Sandow, although he's being kind of buried, anybody that I can say, if you can do this, you've done something. Somewhere along the line, somebody either decided you were going to do something, or somebody decided to let you do something. And that's the WWE. You know, oh, Bryan finally succeeded, Punk finally succeeded, the SHEILD, the Wyatts finally succeeded. That wouldn't have happened unless the WWE greenlighted it. Let's be real. Yes, you are still going to have John Cena's, and they're still going to be annoying. You're still going to have Sheamuses that are useless. You're still going to have Rey Mysterios that should have retired 5 years ago and are still hogging up those last few minutes of the spotlight. I get it. In the Divas division, you're still going to have the Bellas. You know, we're going to have our next generation of Kelly sooner or later, whoever that is. You're going to have the Santinos. You're going to have the Great Khali's. But you know what? I will take all that. I will take all that for whatever destruction Daniel Bryan and Cesaro created in the Elimination Chamber match. I will take it for the surefire tearing down of the house that Wyatts versus SHEILD will be. WWE right now could make that the main event of the Elimination Chamber and nobody would complain. You know what? Even if it even if he's not my favorite guy in the world right now, Swagger versus Big E. Big E just came up from NXT, guys, and he's going up against Jack Swagger, defending what is now the #2 belt in the company. There's a lot of good shit happening. A lot of good shit, and WWE is letting it happen. You know, they are. It is what it is. Anyways, this is why I'm excited for WrestleMania. This is why I wish you guys would all get more excited for WrestleMania, but that being said, it's ridiculous o'clock in the morning. I'm going to bed. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there. Talk down there. Start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. Talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I'm tagging out. Bye.